In spite of my classmates' exuberant sympathy and anxiety, um, Georgia's father had a somewhat rigid and academic views of the old bookworm, short-sighted as a mole, a little hunchbacked, and always closed in his study among tons of notes, books buttered by usury and photocopies of research and programs. He showed me with every gesture the correct way for a life of dedication to culture, and as a shepherd of others' thirst for knowledge. That gloomy and somewhat boring figure didn't drive me crazy. A part of me still rebelled and firmly believed that I was destined for a brighter, more eventful life. I wanted to be a missionary, a Christian preacher, a rich man of science, and full of admirers. I was very clear with myself, and yet I would have had a sea of time to decide. Who to me more than I should be discovered would self-declared my new mentor. I tried to flatter him with testimonies of my admiration compatible with my shy and submissive character, and with the scholastic result that my classmate never missed an opportunity to advertise in front of her parents. Of that small house, crowded with cats and permeated by a pungent smell of dust, cat urine, and old paper, I still have a sweet and reassuring memory. There was also an older aunt, sister of Georgia's mother, who visited their home sporadically. She was completely crazy, a fairy tale of the country and a violent brawler. One day she took me by surprise and trapped me in his strong, smelly arms. "You and I are the same. You are such a dear child. Don't run away from me, please," she whispered to me in that exalted voice of hers, warming with madness. I ran away from her terrified, and tried to make my classmate understand that I absolutely didn't want her to come to her house again during our afternoons of study. The latter usually also attended Georgia's best friends. Deborah, Georgia's best friend, was present in those days of study. She was studying. She was the daughter of an entrepreneur and lived in a fantastic huge villa on the outskirts. I remember having attended the last parties of my life right at her house. I usually took advantage of them to estrange myself, reading or browsing the shelves of the family library. But even in that case, I never felt charged and estranged from a state of things that I was the first to prefer. Deborah belonged to the lucky elite of boys who after middle school can choose to study in a good high school, preferably private and Swiss one, as a base, and then tucker their studies in some famous Anglo-Saxon college across the Channel or overseas. I confess that I envied her very much from this point of view. I would have strengthened and not dissipated or humiliated my wits and more motivated and better prepared professors. This one, this is one of the causes that undoubtedly would have led me one day to say uh, goodbye forever to the academic world of my province as well. I saw my two companions again only about 15 years after the eighth grade exam, when I was already a young man dissociated and out of the world, struggling to escape the grip of schizoidia that was now dragging me into the underworld of loneliness. I think they smelled my depression and were disgusted by it, but kept up appearances to show interest in my attempts to have an independent life in London and then in Rome, respectively. I tried in every way to convince Deborah to meet me in London, and where she had just finished college and was already getting married to a scion of the good English society of the capital. Her life continued to exert a strange attraction on me. I no longer envied her wealth, but her existence at the center of the advanced world among people who counted and graduated from the prestigious University of Oxford and Cambridge, and finally in a city that unfortunately I could only touch at the cost of enormous sacrifices, not only economic, but also and above all mental. I managed to meet her in a cafe where I exposed my problems to her. I wanted at all costs to stay, and to do so I would have to work. I wanted to stay in London. Couldn't she help me to fit into some humble profession that would allow me to emancipate myself from my parents? To tell the truth, she looked me up and down with a shadow of that old benevolence she reserved for me as a young boy, as in the face of a naive and incapable boy who needed the protection of someone far more experienced and shrewd than me. Then, unfortunately, times had changed. With undeniable frankness, she told me that she didn't frequent any of those environments in which I could have inserted myself. "Do you find me changed?" She tried to divert the conversation at a certain point, smiling embarrassed, and making me understand that she had no intention of staying in my company, sitting at a table in a bar where I was the first to give signs of discomfort. No, I don't," I said. And she asked, she said, "But you have changed a lot. You're a man now." And she underlined the word man and with a raised eyebrow, as if to make me understand that by now I should be able to take care of myself. As if that weren't enough, her boyfriend started bombarding her with phone calls. To one of these she replied, "All right, no, now I say goodbye to him." I realized that I was now an unwanted presence in Deborah's life. The old days were gone forever, and we would never see each other again. When it came to seeing Georgia a few years later, it was always because of my prayers. I wanted to change my life in Rome again, and she would have been useful for me to introduce myself to a city that is still mysterious, was still mysterious and too big for me. This time I no longer found in front of me a shy young woman already lost in a world too far for me. Georgia had remained the usual nice, expensive, and somewhat ugly girl who had conquered me with her friendship on the first day of middle school. She was at odds with her boyfriend, with another separation behind her on the verge of marriage, and without a steady job with which to support herself in a city as expensive as central Rome. "Oh, you are right to try this new path. You have always been an intelligent boy. I will see that you will succeed." She encouraged me by accompanying me to the school where I was going to try a new master degree, details in chapter 8. She was kind enough to guide me through the most famous streets and monuments. I pretended to be interested, but step by step a sort of alienating, suffocating sadness was already penetrating me. Was I really an adult struggling with a new life? And who was that woman who in vain took the place of a best friend that perhaps I had never had? When at certain point she touched my arm as if by chance, talking to me about her desire to find a boy who understood her and who would allow her to inaugurate a new sentimental chapter in her life, I pulled away in disgust and pretended to be late for the train that would take me back to Naples. I wanted to cry, to throw up, to go back in time and space. Already strong was the presentiment that, like the London venture, even the adventure in Rome would prove to be yet another hole in the water. Obviously, even from the lukewarm help offered to me by my two former classmates, I was not able to draw any benefit. My own attempts to reconnect our friendship as boys were wrecked a few months after the meetings, like everything else. Deborah no longer replied to my messages. For a moment I confessed that I hated her because she was a privileged one who had everything from the life only for the right of caste and money. I began to view the image post from Facebook showing her huge house, her beautiful and elegant husband, the wedding in which, as it was right, she had spared no expense. First I wrote to her complimenting her, then hinting at, at a few hasty jokes about her Ellie's status. I wrote, now you have a daughter. You don't know how I am by her. I would have liked to have been in her place. She never answered me. She blocked me on Facebook and in any other social network I dared to contact her again. A similar fate also had the relationship with Georgia. After she viewed an entire album of mine public of macabre photos collected online, that in the desperate loneliness that already threatened to kill me then, I tried to alleviate my pain by collecting images of hanged children, player victims, beheaded war victims. Shame on you, she said. I didn't expect you to be such a cynical monstrous style. She wrote, giving me, in her opinion, one last chance to be friends again, except that I had immediately deleted those shameful photos. Laughing out loud and also feeling very witty, I replied with a message in which I called her ignorant and me the misunderstood one. That time at least I took the satisfaction of blocking her first. I would never see her again or resent her. In both cases, the fault of that inevitable ostracism was mine, in short. May even this umpteenth responsibility crush me, just me, now reduced to a puddle of rotten pride. Thank you for listening to me. See you in the next video.